Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. With me, as always, the professional film critic, Sean Patrick, and Jeff Lassiter. Visit us at ihatecritics.net, Everyone's a Critic podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle's CriticsPod. Listen to us at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all of your podcatchers. If you could go to Apple Music, though, and subscribe to the show and rate and review the show, that does help with the algorithms. We will read your review on the air. Patreon.com/criticspod is the best way to help support the podcast. Right now, we mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but the Friday the 13th commentary that Sean and Jeff did is live. You can hear it there. We will release it to the general public October 13th, if we remember. Actually, I think I already have it scheduled. But go there and check it out. We'll try to do some more bonus content as well. We have a couple ideas we've been kicking around. And then TeePublic is where you can get our podcast merch. TeePublic.com, search Critics Pod, or go to ihatecritics.net and click on the TeePublic link. Sean, where can people read your reviews?
Geeks.media, or just vocal.media in general, and also the archive blog if you want to double check me on things I watched years ago and then call me out. It's seanatthemovies.blogspot.com.
And then Jeff, where can people get your artwork?
JeffLassiter.com. Unless you're in Chicago, then next weekend I will be at Golden Con, the Golden Girls Convention, bringing a lot of new stuff. So come and see me.
That's awesome. All right. That's kind of all there I got for you. Oh, yeah, Scream. You went and saw it again, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it Sunday again.
So my son decided to start watching all of them on his own. And he got through the first one, and then he pulls me aside and he's like, hey, you got to give me a spoiler alert here. The coolest character in the whole series is Dewey. When does he die, or does he? He doesn't die, does he? And then
yeah.
and then he goes, and the second coolest character, Randy. When does he die? He doesn't die.
Oh,
I'm just like, really? That's poor 1 and kid. 2? 1 and 2 for you, or Dewey and Randy?
That's when you say to him, you say, look, you really love these characters, so if they do die, then it'll really mean something. Right. That's what's called stakes in a movie.
Well, that's what he hates.
That's why
he hates when it means something. It drives him. He can't sleep at night, and his anxiety kicks in. It's like, it's not real. Oh man, that's funny.
Should we do the voice and call him? And
yes, that would be amazing. That'd be hell for me for at least a day, but it might be worth it for the story.
Oh, I think your wife might have a different viewpoint on that. What the fuck did you do?
She might actually like it more than me. You can talk about it more on the show if you want. I don't want to waste up too much of the time. I actually haven't seen anything this week, so I'm going to head out here shortly. But do you want that to be part of the body of the show, or do you want to talk Scream a little bit before I go?
No, it's up to you. If you want to...
I'm good hanging out. If
you want to talk about it.
I'm cool to hear your opinion on Scream, how it's changed since you've re-seen it, if it has at all.
Well, I saw it opening night, the Thursday, not the fan event because I can't see 3D, but the 7:00 show with my nieces. And I was kind of half watching the movie and half watching my middle niece, because she's like your son. She hated horror movies when I first moved back to the area. And now she's obsessed with Scream, like to the point where I let her sign into my Vudu account. And at least once every week or so, one of the Scream movies is half played on my Vudu. She had a sleepover the other night, and I went to watch something on Vudu, and I noticed that they were watching Magic Mike. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then when I shut off whatever I was watching, I noticed, I went back and I saw that they were watching Scream 2. And they must have fallen asleep, or one of the girls got scared, because it's still half watched on there. But she loves it. She was like, I went to dinner at their house yesterday, and I told her, She goes, "What did you do today?" I said, "I went and saw Scream again." "You didn't call me, you asshole." She's 14. Very precocious, but I was like, well, I guess I should have. I'm sorry, but I already paid $40 to take her and her sister to watch it and snacks and all that. So I'm like, you can take me. How about that?
Yeah.
I did, again, I liked Melissa Barrera better in this one than I did in Scream 5 or 5 Cream. I noticed I've listened to a couple podcasts and talked to some of my friends and you guys about it, and about how the little niggling things that kind of got to you. And I saw those this time. Again, I completely forgot about Sydney until Gail said, "Oh, I talked to Sydney," and I was like, "Oh shit, Sydney, I forgot." Because, going into watching the premiere, I watched all of them and a couple of them, more than once in the lead up. And I was really like, oh, I'm going to miss Sydney. And then not having done that, I was like, oh shit, I forgot Sydney. That's how I think, this group is. I was still pissed that, they can't kill anybody that matters. I wanted Gail to survive, and that's the legacy you can't kill. But one of the twins should have gone.
Right.
The one who was stabbed 50 times by two people at the same time.
Yes. Well, and then I kind of chuckled because Jenna Ortega, Tara, she goes, "How are you still alive?" And I was like, yes, how are you still alive? Because you're Mason Gooding and you're good looking and you're the only guy that is left.
Because the movie was written out of order. They they filmed the romantic part and they're like, "Oh wait, no, we already killed him."
Yeah.
My guess
I guess we'll have to bring him back to life.
It was ad lib on Jenna Ortega's part. She didn't like the script, so she's added it. This makes no sense.
I am loath to talk about people's appearance because you've all seen me on YouTube. But Courtney Cox, I don't get plastic surgery that you can't let go. Her lip fillers I just really noticed it this time when she was in her first scene, and I was just like, oh my God, stop. And this anybody listening, do not ever suggest that a woman needs to get plastic surgery because you don't look better. You just look different. You don't look like yourself anymore. That's like all the hate that Madonna gets, all the hate that Courtney Cox gets, all that. It's because we have unrealistic beauty standards. That's my rant.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Ridiculous beauty standards. Absolutely.
Plus, I'm doing a drawing right now I'm like kind of going back and doing all posters for each Scream movie. And I really have to look at all their faces very, very carefully. And it's just like, it's sad because she doesn't look like she did. And even not even the age, I don't look like I did at 30 or 25 or however old she was filming the first one. I don't look the same, but I can, I look like myself.
Right.
So it really bugged me. And it really kind of took me out of the movie for a minute. Although I guess one of my friends, when I mentioned it today, said, you know what, that could just be that could be in universe because she is on TV and, she does feel that need, but
sure. That is fair. That's a reasonable thing. I think though, with the lip filler though, you have to actually have it done to make it look like that, I think. And I don't know what it is about this lip filler technology that just doesn't work. Like when I see specifically a woman who gets this lip filler stuff, it just never looks like right after Madonna. And it does seem to go back to normal. Like Madonna looks better now, but and right after she got the lip filler the first time, horrifying.
It depends on what kind you get too.
Yeah.
If it's silicone, which I suspect, like Lisa Rinna, who used to be on Days of Our Lives, and she's one of the Real Housewives now, she had silicone in the early 90s injected into her lips. She has it's always been her thing. She's had these huge lips, and she said, I remember I used to watch her on Days of Our Lives, and I used to read all the soap opera magazines. Hi, I'm a homo. And she talked about it. She said, you know what? Somebody mentioned that, her distinctiveness. And she said, well, I made the mistake of going to somebody who wasn't qualified, and I got silicone injected to my lips, and it's there forever unless I, have it taken out. But, and as she's aged, her face has aged a little bit. She does have she's had some touch up, but her lips are just garish now because she had this done. You can get saline and then it'll eventually go away. Madonna had that in, I think, 1990. I used to look at everything Madonna, and I had a couple magazines, and she didn't look like herself because she'd had plumpers or whatever. But it's not just, women. I've seen some guys who have had, fillers and lip fillers, and Mickey Rourke. I know he had a bad accident, and that was part of the reason. But again, people get addicted to it. And once you have one thing, it's so easy to go get another and another and another. And there's a meme that went around last fall with him in profile, and it was like Mickey Rourke has turned himself from this, and there's a picture of him young, gorgeous. He was so good looking. And then they said he's transformed from this into the Shape from Halloween. And you kind of see it because his hairline is so far back, and where your sideburns go if you've got a beard or whatever.
Right.
It starts like right at the top of his ears, and just it's an addiction, and I get it. I actually taught. This is going to sound like I'm name dropping, and I kind of am, but when I lived in LA and it was during COVID, and I would sit outside of Starbucks and just work on a drawing and watch people go by. And I had met Leslie Jordan at the airport several months before this, and he saw me drawing one day outside of Starbucks, and he stopped and he was like, "Oh, what's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, hi." And I said, "We've met before, So this I would go up there every day. I wasn't working because of COVID, and I was just, trying to get some artwork out there. And we would watch all the people walk by. And he would just rail on these people and their plastic surgery. And it was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. To the point where I was like, "Oh my God, Leslie, you can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say that. And A, you can't say that about people. B, you can't say it so loud that they hear you and look at you." There was one of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race who used to come and I think that's where she picked up her tricks from Grindr, but she'd also get from the seafood. There's a lobster restaurant right next to the Starbucks that used to be on the corner of Santa Monica and Robertson, maybe. But they'd come and pick up their seafood and their tricks at the same time, and they had a lot of work done. And Leslie Jordan would say to me, "Do you think that she can even like chew that lobster with all that lip filler?" And I mean, it was so funny. But since then, I've kind of like, okay, I don't want to. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying I'm criticizing society for making that happen. So
and there's also an industry too, that not just Hollywood, but like an industry in the medical industry that keep filling people's heads with the idea that they can be young forever and that these things can work. And it's a 50-50 shot, honestly. I know they don't want to tell you that, but it is. That you can entirely lose yourself. That's what happened to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had a lot of problems, but he was trying to get his face back after it got fucked up the first time. He was trying to go back to being Michael Jackson, and they couldn't do it. So he just kept getting more work and more work, trying to find himself again. And it just became impossible after a while.
Well, and you look at him in his last years, and then you look at Janet, who had a nose job and, a little procedures here and there, but never didn't look like Janet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She still had that same smile that she had on Even Different Strokes. You know what I mean? She was still that sweet face, but Michael was addicted. And I think it's funny that we were going to talk about Scream, and now we're talking about the beauty standards of Hollywood and beyond. But it's a problem, especially when you know, and we'll talk about Shazam. Helen Mirren, everybody talks about how beautiful she is, and she is. If she's had work done, it's just like a little bit here and there, but I don't think she has. Jane Fonda is one who she has gorgeous genes anyway. She always has, and her plastic surgeon should get the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
it is good work. I get it. Yeah.
She looks like she doesn't look her age because she's what 85, but she looks 75. She's not trying to look 30.
Right.
You know, Lily Tomlin she's always had an angular face, and now she's had some fillers and stuff, but she doesn't look not like herself. I think she might have gone to Jane Fonda's plastic surgeon because they're such good friends. But like, you know, it's a little bit is fine, but stop getting addicted to it.
That has been the advice hour. Now let's.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
All right, I need to go drop off the show, but you guys take it from here, and hopefully if you guys want to do more later on, text me near the end, and I can maybe pop back on.
Yeah, we definitely want you back for Flick Chart.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later.
See ya.
All right.
Now let's talk about Bob.
The work he's had done, amazing.
Yeah, everybody. I worked a part-time job last fall, and all the kids, and I call kids anybody under 30 now because I'm old. They're like, "Oh, what are you, like 40?" And I was like, "Oh, bless your heart." And I told them that I'm 50, and they're like, "No way! Oh my God! You know, why do you look younger?" And I said, "Because I never smile." I'm like Christina Ricci Wednesday album. Adams.
I get the same thing. Like I get that I have a very young face, and I can attribute that to not smoking and not drinking. I mean, not to say that those are bad things. Go ahead, smoke, drink all you want. That's up to you. But because I've never done that, it has kept me a little bit. I feel a little bit more youthful than I otherwise might be. I've just not done that kind of damage to my body. I also don't go outside all that much because I watch too many movies, so there's less sun damage as well. So
there's no sun in the basement, Sean. Just kidding.
So yeah, there's that. But I wish I'd gone outside during Shazam, Fury of the Gods, maybe like in the middle somewhere. Maybe had some food and come back and maybe catch the end. This isn't that bad. It's just kind of there. This is another one of those movies where it's just like achingly competent, which seems to be like a place where Hollywood is settling into this place where we've whittled down the directors. We've whittled away sort of the really, truly bad directors. But we've also kind of limited the guys who are really, really good, or the people who are really, really good, in a way that kind of marginalized them off to, limited release and whatnot. And so now we're getting just this bland, like potato soup of just competent directors. Now that's to say I should point out that I think David F. Sandberg is a very good director. I thought the first Shazam was a pretty good movie, and I think his horror work is exceptional. But this was just blandly competent. The story is picking up from the first Shazam. Billy Batson and his family, his brothers and sisters, adopted brothers and sisters, all have superpowers. And in this story now, after having fought together, they're now fighting separately. Each of them wants to go their own way. Billy's trying to hold them together. Very bland, very particular, very obvious story being told. The problem is that instead of growing up, Billy Batson has somehow gotten even more obnoxiously like immature and angsty. He seems to be going backwards instead of forwards, and that's a real shame. There was a very thin line between obnoxious and charming in the first Shazam, and I thought he kind of walked that line pretty well to the point where I found him charming and likable in the superhero persona. This time, though, he seems dumber. He seems like he's playing the character down, and that's a big step back for me. And though overall, that's really what holds me back from liking this movie, which again is achingly competent on every other level aside from his character. I like the addition of Rachel Zegler. I think she's always interesting. She's always pulling focus away from the other because she seems so much more interesting than everybody else in the movie. Helen Mirren is always great, but she seems to be kind of on autopilot. She's kind of
Yeah, she wasn't Helen Mirren to me
yeah.
this time.
She's not full Helen Mirren presence. Like if you want to see Helen Mirren, watch The Queen. That movie is incredible.
Yeah.
She gives you a full-bodied Elizabeth for the first time ever. It's incredible to watch. That's Helen Mirren at her absolute best. Here she's there, but she's kind of like, what else am I going to be doing today? Like, I think I got to pick up the dry cleaning at some point. I'll have somebody do that. Maybe there's something, I don't know. I got to go to a play tonight or something. Like she just seems to be checking her calendar throughout the movie.
Yeah, it's like almost the definition of phoning it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Minus
also,
a literal phone.
yeah, I mean, I also I love everybody in this cast. I have some issues with Zachary Levi now because I found out he's a big Jordan Peterson proponent, and I can't separate. Yeah, I just can't separate that. But because that's the slippery slide from, you know what, guys, some guys are good and, you know, treated badly by women to fuck trans people. That's the slippery slope. Ugh. You know, he's like 3 episodes of Joe Rogan away from being a transphobe. Sorry, I can't stop being political today. So I kept that kind of was in the back of my head the whole time. It just kind of bothered me, but I generally liked him, and I really liked him in the first Shazam. What I did miss though is teenage Billy Batson.
Yeah, that kid's pretty good.
I watched the original one, you know, like before I went and saw this one, and I was like, oh, I forgot how good he was and how, you know, he really kind of makes you feel the, you know, abandonment. Mm-hmm. And I think if we'd had more of him in this, that whole, you know, my siblings are abandoning me thing would have been a little more believable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an element here where, like in the first film, I think Zachary Levi and him were spending a lot of time together and working on the character together, and it doesn't seem to be the case this time. There seems to be a distinct, there seems to be a distinct disconnect between those two characters. The way the kid is playing Billy Batson, and the way that Zachary Levi is playing him as Shazam. It just seems they seem off.
Yeah, it's like a disconnect between them. Was he filming something else? Was he not available? I really wanted them to be able to kind of explore, you know, have him run into his birth mom when he's out with his foster mom, and, you know, have that scene where he's just like, she's like, oh my God, you know, and he's just like, I'm good now. This is my mom. You know, he could have introduced, I wanted more after watching that subplot in the last one. Cause that's his whole character arc is being abandoned and finding a family in these other superheroes from the foster home, you know,
the themes are very muddled in this movie. And very obvious, like the one about him referring to the adoptive mom by her name instead of calling her mom. You know that by the end he's going to call her mom. Like that is very lame.
Screenwriting 101.
Yeah. But they also set up the theme of like him trying to bring them together. They set up this big sequence on the bridge, on this collapsing bridge, where none of them are working together. They are saving people, but they're not, you know, working together at it. They're all doing it their own way. So the theme should be them learning to work together. And by the end, it's just Billy by himself saving the world. And that is in defiance of the theme of what should be the theme. Because again, I think the writing on this is incredibly lazy.
Yeah. I didn't love it, and I thought, you know, they could have cut out. And this is my run. I've noticed this. I've listened to some of our older shows, and this is my running theme: is this movie could have been shorter, but absolutely not for like runtime fatigue or anything. But this one, you could have cut out, you know, probably about a good 10 minutes of just repetitive stuff.
How about cut out the 10-minute Skittles sequence? Could we not? Could we do without the Skittles?
Oh my god! First of all, I hate Skittles. They're disgusting. They're like harder to eat Starburst.
I've never had a Skittle.
Oh God, they get like you're left with this little like tiny little lump of whatever at the end, and it's just it's disgusting.
It sounds
Um,
disgusting. But it gets like two spots in this movie where like the little girl is going to she wants to feed Helen Mirren, and so she gives her Skittles, but she only gives her the yellow ones because those are the ones that the little girl hates.
yeah,
Which is
I get
I guess it's cute unless it's but the character is being played by Megan Good at that point and not the little girl, so it didn't like
yeah.
there was a disconnect there. But um, the second scene is just egregious. They've got to get like ancient warrior unicorns to fight with them, so they need to give them Skittles.
You know what?
It's the most it's the most forced and like ugly kind of product placement that there's good product placement in movies and there's terrible product placement in movies, and there really is no middle ground, and this one's certainly not in the middle ground. This is bad.
You know what they should have done? They should have had Mike Myers dressed as Wayne from Wayne's World come out with a bag of Skittles and just hold it up and go, "Taste the rainbow." You know, that's the only way that it was not.
The only way.
It was just so forced, and I get that you have to have product placement, whatever, but could you just say like candy or something? It just was stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody to a person that's seen it that I've talked to called that moment out as the worst thing they've seen in the theaters this year.
Right. Yeah, that's
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah. No.
I guess we'll spoil some stuff. I was pleased that they actually had Gal Gadot in the movie as Wonder Woman, as opposed to just, some muscly guy walking behind, what's his face? Jake.
Oh yeah. The Superman cameo from the original.
Yeah. I was pleased that she did it, and since we're not going to see her anymore, I thought it was a good send off for her portrayal, because I liked her even in Wonder Woman 1984. So having her, kind of walk off into the literal sunset, I thought that was nice. I laughed out loud in the theater when you thought you were going to see her face at dinner in his dream, and it was Jimon Hunsu. I laughed out loud. I thought that was hilarious. I mean, they're so ridiculous.
There are elements of this that are good. Like there are elements of this that are clever in that way, and I wish there was more of that in this. But I find most of it just kind of like, I know where we're going. I get and I don't mind these characters. They're charming enough in many ways. Outside of, again, a lot of the choices that Zachary Levi makes.
Well, we know that the Snyderverse is ending.
Yeah,
and I really got about halfway through the movie, and I'm like, oh, they know the Snyderverse is ending, and they're just kind of like, okay, well, there's no stakes here, so.
I was funny though. I was actually writing about about the Snyderverse a little bit in my review of this film, and I've kind of been bugged this whole time about the way that certain elements of the DC universe are this, childlike dream, this childlike wonder about superhero powers, and they're filled with candy colors and whatnot. And then you've got Snyder basically making black and white art films, superhero movies. And I was like, these things don't fit together, with like Superman, like the future of the DCU is this wasteland ruled over by an evil Superman. And then it kind of got thinking, you know what? Actually, this does kind of track, because Billy Batson and his family are just the kind of people you would feed to an evil Superman. He would just murder the hell out of them to shock you in the first 10 minutes of that movie. And it's like, yeah, because Billy Batson is that guy who would throw himself into that situation and get himself killed. That's kind of perfect, actually. The whole Shazamily, as they've been called, which is just the worst, by the way.
Jesus.
I hate it so much. Them getting just absolutely murdered by Superman would actually be a great opening to a very bleak, Snyderverse future of the DC film universe. So actually, I do think they fit together.
Yeah, I kind of wish that they were still going. They were still going to go forward with like the expanded universe stories, where this one doesn't necessarily fit in.
Sorry, Jeff.
But
There must be some kind of emergency because I've got somebody calling me more than once. Hang on a second. Sorry. Hello? Oh, yeah. I'm recording my podcast. I just texted you. I'm sorry. That's all right. I saw you call twice and I didn't want to miss you in case. No, I've never heard of it. Oh, wow. That's awesome, dude. That's very cool. Congratulations. Wow. Well, I want to hear all about it, but I got to finish this. All right. Bye.
Bob, you got something to cut out.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Bob. When somebody calls you like 2 times in a row, it's like, oh my God, it must be something serious.
Yeah.
She was just had something really good happen to her, so that was really nice.
Nice.
All right, so we were talking about Shazam, and I thought for maybe just for a moment. No, I didn't really. I didn't really think the movie had any balls, actually. But there was a moment where it's like, maybe they'll kill him. Like, maybe the Snyderverse is ending. Maybe they kill him. No, of course they didn't. This movie doesn't have that kind of balls.
Yeah.
I would have been impressed, though. I honestly would have upped my review like to a slightly more positive one if they had like pushed forward on that and actually made that a thing where Billy Batson dies. Not that I want the character to die. I know I've said that over and over again. I'm saying it would have been true to this character to do what he did, and it would have been bold and different from the very formulaic way they played it out overall.
Yeah. And they could have, and there's no telling what the DC universe is going to do.
Mm-hmm. This is dead. Shazam is dead. It made $30 million opening weekend. It's over with.
I know that. I'm just saying, and I think that's because the public knows that the Snyderverse is dead.
Yeah,
I really think that they're just like, why should we care? Why should we not wait until it gets up on HBO Max or whatever it's going to be, and by the time that comes out, people don't care because DC is spectacularly bad at this.
Yeah.
At building a universe. So
sadly, Marvel is going in that direction. They're growing bad at it.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing them kill everybody in the Guardians of the Galaxy off. Because like a lot of people don't want to do that anymore, and I'm kind of fine with that. I'm not a huge fan of what's his face, Chris, and he always plays the same character.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing for Andy from Parks and Rec as Star-Lord. It would have been a great crossover if Andy had gotten picked up and become Star-Lord. I'm looking forward to that. I liked Quantumania. I think we talked about that. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I'm just kind of waiting to see like Secret Wars and that kind of stuff, because that's the kind of the big world building ones that I like. So
the problem that I have with the Marvel universe right now is it seems to be trending towards what Shazam is, which is that bland inoffensive middle ground where nothing bad can really happen. That's at the very least, whether you like Snyder's work or not, he at least goes there on his Superman movies, his Superman Batman movie. He went there in Justice League. He goes there into dark, violent places, potentially with real stakes. It feels like Batman or Superman could die. It feels like there's a universe here where there could be something at stake in the future. He plants the seed of the idea that Superman could go bad, which is a pretty big stake to hang out there. Like, he was taking big chances. And I may not love Zack Snyder's work overall, but I think I did like Justice League. His 4-hour Justice League. I watched it in one sitting, which I thought was not possible, but it was like a great TV show that I didn't want to turn off. I would have liked to have seen more of that. Because again, he, at the very least, you can't say he didn't take big swings and big chances with his movies. Whereas, I think where we're headed, like, I think Quantumania is. I didn't hate it, but again, it is very competent, and that sort of bland competence, that inoffensive forgettableness, is kind of where we're trending everywhere, and I really don't like it. I really don't like it. I would much rather a movie be terrible than a movie be like Shazam and just a movie that's already leaving me.
I kind of wonder, though, because I liked Multiverse of Madness, not for what they did to Wanda. I'm not talking about that, but they did have the guts to make a beloved character bad for the wrong reasons. There was also a horror element to it with, Marvel Zombies, which would love to see them do that. And killing off some fan favorites, even if it was in the multiverse. But people didn't like that. That, we want John Krasinski to play Reed Richards, and then he does, and they're like, oh, he was only on there for a minute. It sucked. I hate it. I don't want him to be on, and it's like, you give people what they want, and they don't want it anymore. It's like Courtney Love
I just think that
what you want, you never want it again.
I just think they took all the wrong chances in that movie. The problem,
but they took some.
Yeah,
that was my point. They took
it
some.
Is at least, I will give you that. That is a far more memorable movie than Shazam is. I may hate Multiverse of Madness, but it's a far more memorable experience than Shazam, which is already just, it's mostly gone at this point.
Yeah, I mean, right now we aren't technically building to anything the way they were building to Avengers, in Age of Ultron, and they're not. It doesn't seem like they're building to any of that, even though they are. I know they are, but and I know that Quantumania was building towards something, but I never got that sense until the end credit scenes.
Yeah, very true.
And I think part of that is the detriment to the movies is the TV shows. And because of the fact that, there was an end credit scene instead of something like massive, like the Thanos scene, like where he turns at the end of Avengers and you're like, holy shit, they finally are doing Thanos. It's a thing for the Loki TV series that's gonna be coming out again soon. It wasn't that, it wasn't, I don't know, Galactus or anybody, any of the big villains from other, like Sony or,
right.
You know what I mean? And they could have said, it could have been, like Wolverine or something like that, but it was like, oh, we're doing the TV shows and credit song and credit scenes now.
Now it's a commercial for Disney Plus. Yeah. Which again, part of my blandening of the overall universe is that type of corporate synergy as opposed to something nice like Thanos. It makes me wonder though. This whole conversation though has made me wonder if Batgirl maybe was actually a movie that did take a lot of chances, and that's why they're not releasing it, because they want more Shazams and less Batgirls, like less movies that might have a risk to them.
From what I hear, and this is just me hearing a couple things from a couple people, there was something in Batgirl, and I don't know, take this with like the tiniest grain of salt. There was some plot point in Batgirl that would not have ever paid off with what they're doing with it.
Yeah. And
because it was done, it was gonna be part of the Snyderverse, and it had something to do with like Batman or Robin or something with where they're coming up with in the Flash movie that again why release that if you're not going to release Batgirl? It's one of those mysteries that will probably never be solved. We'll probably see a no FX version of it someday on the internet, but
who knows?
Apparently there was something that would have pissed so many people off that they just abandoned the Snyderverse.
See, and there it is. That's what I'm saying. They probably took a really big risk, and that is exactly what corporate media does not want you to do anymore. They are blandening everything. They want Shazam, not movies that are going to be memorable. That's to say again, Shazam isn't bad. It's just not good. It's a movie. It's a movie.
My first thought was, oh, I don't like this, and then towards the end, when Gal Gadot came out and was Wonder Woman, I was like, oh, it's hitting me right there. I really like her, and if it's a comic book movie, first of all, nobody is dead forever in a comic book movie. They're like soap operas. Every time, like the death of Superman, until sales go down, and then we gotta resurrect him. Mm-hmm. We know that there will never be another Shazam movie in this iteration, just based on how HBO and Warner Brothers is completely fucking everything up. It seems like
right.
But I would have gone to see another Shazam movie. I didn't hate it. I was just disappointed that it was, there were so many unnecessary details.
Yeah.
A lot could have been condensed in it, but
I'm coming off like I hate it, but it's like I hate more of what it seems to represent, which is again that middle ground, that growing middle ground of movie that is just, it is the bane of my existence, this kind of movie, because it feels like I'm not going to have anything to write about or think about or talk about later. And I mean, granted, we've had a long conversation about it, which is nice. It's a good conversation and all, but it's a conversation about how kind of empty this is. This is a very empty calorie movie.
Yeah, and you got Lucy Liu, who plays a great bitch. She's just so good at it, but you never knew if she was really a bitch or if she's going to turn at the last minute, or is she good? Is she bad? Is she really bad? Until the movie's almost over, then you're like, oh, she's really, really bad. So I just think a lot of it was wasted.
I think it was undercooked. Like the
Design of the Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, they took it out of the oven too soon, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk true crime. Boston Strangler is on Hulu, and it stars Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon as the seemingly forgotten journalists who followed the case of the Boston Stranglers, because there were more than one. These two incredible journalists sort of stumble across this story. Keira Knightley's character is a reporter for this Boston newspaper. She works in the lifestyle section. She's kind of pigeonholed there. She's told by her mom about this murder that occurs, and she decides that she wants to follow that story. She gets permission from her editor, Chris Cooper, to pursue it, but only if Carrie Coon, a more experienced crime reporter, works with her on the story, as that develops into the story of the Boston Strangler, which is a series of killings, about 13 of them. Mostly it begins with these elderly women alone in their homes, and it grows from there. But the story that's being told here, and I think it's one that's really necessary and vital, is that this was a story of male on female violence. This was a story of men using the Strangler as a cover to do horrible things, to cover up their horrible, things they were doing in their life. And that story doesn't get told enough. We get told the story of, it's strange. You just sort of come to accept over time that this whole Albert DeSalvo story, and yes, I do believe Albert DeSalvo is a murderer. I think they proved that in 2013 via DNA evidence. He was a murderer. He did murder them, but I think he only murdered those old ladies. I think that And
Yeah.
that fits with what we know of serial killers. Serial killers have a type. They have a way they go about doing things. It doesn't vary. And the killings that happened of these younger women did not match the pattern at all. One of them was African American, which again, people with serial killers with a very specific pathology don't tend to stray in that direction. They certainly don't go younger if they're killing older people. Like that's a pathology that is just so hardwired into these types of serial killers. We know that now. They wouldn't have known that then. And one of the things that also is good about this movie is it's incredibly, incredibly fair to the detectives on the ground. Now, it's not very complimentary of the guys up top, but those guys up top, the politicians and the leaders of the police department who are screwing up this case through their egotism and not wanting to work together with other police departments or other jurisdictions, trying to hold their murders in their place and not sharing information, and the various political machinations that went into that, they definitely made it impossible to actually solve this case. But the guys on the ground were doing relatively good work. They were following what they had in front of them. And I think they could have made good progress on this if it hadn't been for all that outside bullshit constantly pressing upon them. And I thought the movie was incredibly fair in presenting that. But if I've got one complaint, I guess this has a one cliche that kind of bugs me about movies like this. There's always that scene where and this one has bothered me because the husband of Keira Knightley's character begins as this very supportive, forward-thinking guy, but then when the plot needs him to fit into what actually happened, which they ended up getting divorced, he has to become the guy who's upset that his wife isn't there to make him dinner at night. And he's got to become unsupportive, just seemingly out of nowhere. And there's no real way to develop that character to make it any less jarring that it is, that turn from being supportive to being unsupportive. But it's a cliche in movies like this where the daring, bold, brave reporter has the difficult home life, where she's not being supported by her loved ones who want her to get off that case and come home and be with your family and be a mom and all that stuff. It's too much of a cliche. I wish they'd found a way around that a little bit better. But overall, I thought this movie was gripping. I thought it was exciting. I thought the two lead performances were exceptional. I love the supporting players. I thought they made smart choices. Rory Cochrane is used as a plot point, but he's such a compelling presence to me that when he's introduced at the very beginning and then brought back at the very end, I loved that as kind of a red herring, a way of reminding you this wasn't just Boston. This wasn't just, there was more going on here. That was very exciting. That was a really interesting way to tell that story and to use him as a function early on to set up that story and then to bring him back at the end. I thought that was very clever storytelling.
Yeah, when you said about the husband, it was like when I started watching, I was like, oh, it's so refreshing to see the husband at that time in the late 60s say, you do what you have to do. And then, of course, when that happened, it's like, girl, where did this come from? Because 20 minutes ago, you were like, yeah, girl power. I thought it was superbly acted. It was like the period. My one problem, and this is a problem I have with a lot of movies, the color timing and everything was so dark. Mm-hmm. My TV, I have a Samsung TV that sometimes if I scrolling through the bottom menu or something, it'll just stay dark. Like the TV goes dark so that the menu with all the apps and stuff is brighter. But sometimes I'll have to change the setting on it. And I was like, did it revert? Did the setting revert? Because everything was so dark. Yeah. Stop doing that with everything. I know it's the past. I get that it's the past, but where it was like they were trying to do Zodiac by David Fincher, use his color timing and stuff. And I was like, why does it have to be so dark? It doesn't have to be, because yes, it's a dark story, but it's also, we want to see the fashion and the settings. We want to see that it's the 60s and how well they do setting that scene. So that was my only quibble. really.
I liked the period cinematography. I thought that was interesting. I thought it looked like the 1960s, but you're right. At times it was a little too dark. They could have definitely found areas to just bring a little bit more light in. I do agree with that. I thought the choices that they made in scenes of creating tension were just kind of brilliant. I loved when Keira Knightley ends up going into that apartment by herself with that guy, and then immediately turns around and walks out. It's like that is characters don't often get to be that smart, and I liked that. I liked that a lot. I was really impressed with that, and I loved that still has also kind of a payoff later, which is great. Just it's a terrific piece of true crime storytelling, but it also has this kind of a seriousness to it that is very modern, and it's telling a story that has a sort of a modern resonance about, again, male and female violence, and that creepy way that men can insinuate themselves into women's lives, and in that sort of toxic way. And I thought that was really well done without being too prominent, without overcoming the elements that make it popcorn entertainment.
Yeah. One of the things that I enjoyed about this, and I've been saying since I watched Dahmer on Netflix, was we need to stop centering these stories around the killers and making them look famous or whatever. We need to start centering around things like this, like the journalist who broke the story, same with Zodiac. It was Robert Graysmith, and say what you will about the guy in the Zodiac books and how he probably, accused the wrong man or whatever, but it was about him, and he was discovering all this. It wasn't focused, on the killer necessarily. Yes, they show some of the killings, but, it's just like this. This was centered on the two female journalists who broke the story. And that, to me, is kind of the future. If we're going to keep telling these true crime stories, which I'm a big fan of true crime, but even my friend Patrick's podcast, True Crime Obsessed, they talk about that a lot, and they say, stop making killers famous. Let's start talking about the badass people who solve these cases. And yes, absolutely, the institution of policing is corrupt. However, there are a few good cops that go after these guys, and mostly guys, and are actually trying to do this work. And female journalists like this, they're breaking all the stories. Like Mandy Matney, who, I don't know if you're familiar with this stupid fucking Murdoch case, where the guy killed his wife and son because the walls were closing in.
I tried to avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so hard when you open Twitter on the days that the thing was going on. I'm just like, I don't ever want to see this ginger soulless motherfucker ever again. And then it's just constant. But Mandy Matney is a journalist who did a podcast called The Murdoch Murders. And she set the bar super high, I might add, for storytelling of this kind of magnitude and how to center it. And we should be, if they make a movie about that case, it should be centered around Mandy Matney, not this soulless ginger murderer motherfucker.
Yeah, it's so indicative of it's so indicative of our past, sort of accidental misogyny, the way that serial killers get centered in that narrative instead of the people that either catch them or the people that they kill. Which name a victim of Albert DeSalvo. Like, if you haven't seen this movie, like, Albert DeSalvo, him as the Boston Strangler, and we get to hear his name, but you've never heard the name of these two journalists before this movie. Like,
I never had
their story.
I do a lot of true crime stuff, so
their part of this has been completely left out of history for reasons that you can only chalk up to just that accidental misogyny that centers, the way that our media has centered stories mostly from a male perspective. And I know I sound woke or whatever when I say that. I'm not alleging a conspiracy. I'm saying that for years, men wrote history, and what do you know? Men put men at the center of history. It's just the way it kind of works.
Yes, abolish the patriarchy. Everybody, I just no, and I'm actually being serious because there are so many more interesting stories that never get told. Our current political climate, Florida is where woke goes to die. Good. Call yourself woke then and die, because it's just woke is knowing that this stuff, this misogyny and racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia exists, and how to take steps to eliminate the phobias. You know what I mean? It's not just rampant political correctness. No, it's showing people, like, did you ever know about the Tulsa Race Massacre?
Yeah.
Before a couple years ago? I never did. I never learned about it in school. It's stuff like that the 1619 Project was very interesting on Hulu. Done by a fellow Iowan, Nicole Hannah-Jones. That kind of stuff they call it woke, but it just means we're not just interested in cis heterosexual white men anymore. There's there's millions of other stories out there that can be told. And that's what I really loved about this one, as opposed to the Tony Curtis one, because it was more about, breaking the story as opposed to being the story.
We'll get to that in a second. I do want to say that it's very strange when I think about woke as a term and what it means. It's literally just saying that racism, sexism, hatred is just bad. Just on the most basic level. Shouldn't we all agree those are bad things? Instead of finding a way, I get yelled at for being woke, and I'm like, all I'm saying is racism is bad.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that have happened recently. Like there's textbooks in Florida, the ones that are going to be used in Florida to teach about
those are not textbooks.
Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
Well, the one about Rosa Parks completely leaves out why she was forced to sit in the front of the bus or the back of the bus. It mentions in all the other versions, except the ones that go to Florida and maybe Texas, that it was because of the color of her skin. Not the ones that go to Florida, because you can't say that. You can't put the actual truth and facts in a book anymore. God. And it's just, you know what? If you're so concerned with your own religion and your own kids learning about shit, then fine, homeschool them. I don't care anymore. But you can't tell other people how they get to parent their kids.
If only Albert DeSalvo had a good family life, maybe he wouldn't be a killer. My transition.
I bet he saw a drag show.
1968, The Boston Strangler, starring Tony Curtis and Henry Fonda, is an unusual movie, as it came out just 6 years after the murders occurred, or was it 5 years actually after the murders had occurred?
I think it was 5 actually.
It was, I just said that. And just within that short period of time, Albert DeSalvo is still alive and still hasn't been convicted of the killings, and yet because he never was, he never gets caught. Actually, for real. He's crazy and he ends up in a mental institution. But this is a very unusual movie. It does track in a way similarly to this, except it's centering its narrative in that very male, perspective. But I was really having a hard time with this one early on. They do a lot of forced perspective where you're in the perspective of the killer, watching his victims, and then you're getting a lot of information from radio and TV, and there's no central character for like the first 30 minutes. And I mean, it was kind of interesting. It was a different way of approaching making a movie, but it was really weird. I was really waiting for when is Tony Curtis going to get here? He shows up really late in the movie, actually.
Yeah, it's like
which kind
almost an
of
hour into it.
surprised me because I thought this like his face is on the poster, and he's like everything is. I don't know. It was interesting. It was an interesting way to go. And then they introduced multiple different cops who were doing multiple different investigations into different various potential killers, and they were each very interesting in their own way. Um, I like this. I think it's pretty good. And it doesn't necessarily center Albert DeSalvo until later on when Tony Curtis does enter the movie, which is kind of it's kind of interesting in that way. I'm not sure. I read Roger Ebert's review of this right before we started, and he was saying how fast that he wrote his review back in 1968 when the movie came out, and he was talking about how this movie's plot, or this movie's marketing existed to exploit the Boston Strangler, and it did. There was a display in the lobby where Roger was that had like this door that it was this tiny cardboard door that would swing open and closed, and inside were rotating photos of the 13 victims of the Boston Strangler. And it's like, this is a little much, this is this is really exploitative of what happened. But he also said that on the other hand, this is, an incredible piece of popcorn entertainment. Like as a movie, it's really solid, but it shouldn't exist. his final point was this shouldn't exist because it's very exploitative of the murders. And from that was a really interesting to get that perspective at the time, because we've got a lot of distance. And usually when it comes to stuff like this, you get like a Charles Manson story, you get some distance from it and you can tell the story in a much more detached way. And they weren't particularly detached from it at that time. And it had to feel kind of raw in that moment. And that's kind of an interesting perspective on this movie.
Yeah, I like, when we go back and talk about a classic, I like to read a little bit about it from, contemporary reviews and things like that. I started watching this a couple of years ago. I bought the Blu-ray, and I got it for cheap, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to watch this. And I watched about half of it, and where's Tony Curtis? Where's
right.
And I'm like, I'll come back to it. And then I never came back to it until this week. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, if you're going to have somebody like Tony Curtis, who's got so much charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, you gotta, have him in it. But then I was like, okay, he's in it. And it was so like almost an art film towards the end. And the different, like you watch the chase when he tries to break into the apartment and they're chasing him, and when they catch him, having that done with the blocks of video, kind of layering on top of each other, really liked that. Mm-hmm. And it was just, again, I would have liked to have a bit of a female perspective on the whole thing as opposed to just the victims.
Right.
That kind of took me out of it a little bit. I did like Henry Fonda. I thought he played a good kind of detective in it. I don't know if I'll go back to this one, where I feel like I could go back to the new one first.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
So up the contrast and brightness on my TV first, but I will definitely watch that one again.
I'm curious how your Blu-ray looked, because I watched this movie on an app on my TV called Freevee, and on this the cut that they have is so ugly. It is so gross looking. It looks like it's been run through, like it looks like somebody smoked over this thing, like ashed on it and wiped it off. Like it looks so muddy.
If you're watching it on Freevee, there's I know that Tubi does sometimes. They will take a VHS dub.
That's definitely what I watched.
And it's I watched the Blu-ray, looked good. It's on Hulu.
Yeah.
I started watching it in my living room, and then I went to my bedroom, and my region-free Blu-ray player doesn't really play Blu-rays very often anymore. It'll just like run and then spit them out. So I was like, oh shit, I guess I have to go back to the living room. And then I was like, wait, no, it's on Hulu because they got the new one. So I watched the rest of it on there, and it was clear.
Okay.
So
I
the Blu-ray is from Twilight Time, a boutique that no longer exists.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but it's a good transfer.
I thought Henry Fonda was incredible. He's such a great actor. Henry Fonda feels like he lives his characters so incredibly well. He embodies them.
Yeah.
And I thought this character was one that he pulls off that trick with, where it just feels like he is that guy. He is this very intelligent, very determined man. Who's definitely weighed down by what he's seeing and what he's witnessing and what he's trying to stop. And then you've got George Kennedy, who's just kind of the perfect cop, which kind of makes him perfect for Naked Gun later on when he punctures that persona sort of brilliantly. He's fantastic in this. But then when Tony Curtis arrives, he takes over. He takes over the movie, and it is a big performance at times, but it is a performance that seems to make sense to Albert DeSalvo. It seems to make sense to the point where I guess Tony Curtis's conception of Albert DeSalvo is the conception that most people have of who Albert DeSalvo was. Like everybody assumed, based off of this movie, everyone assumed that he was the guy who killed 13 women. And this movie, and I think the 2023 movie actually makes this point kind of at the end, where one of the Boston detectives is working on as a consultant on this movie. It kind of shows this was really irresponsible to make this in this moment, because you're kind of ruining every other case by pointing out that by placing DeSalvo in the context of being the killer and creating this, especially embodying him via Tony Curtis, you're cementing in people's minds what happened with the Boston Strangler, even though that's not necessarily what happened. That's how powerful Hollywood is, and how powerful Tony Curtis is in this performance, is that this becomes the truth of Albert DeSalvo and the Boston Strangler for decades on, until relatively recently, when we were actually people started looking back on these cases going, actually not all of them. Yeah, he killed the older women, but he didn't kill all of them.
Well, and that's because cops want to just close it. They just want to,
oh, absolutely.
They got the guy. That's why you get so many of these wrongful conviction podcasts that are coming out. Because they got their killer. Brendan Dassey is in prison because they had to get his uncle, and that, he obviously was there. So he obviously was the killer. And it's stop.
Yeah. This is the biggest problem that people have when it comes to detectives, and when it's just, and we see it every day in police departments across the country, where a crime happens and a detective will go, I know who did this. And they'll just set about trying to prove that that's what happened. Tunnel vision. It's the worst way to go about processing a case. You're just ignoring the evidence. You're ignoring what might have actually happened, and you're trying to cobble everything into the narrative that you want it to be, because you've already decided what that narrative is. That's the worst way to be a detective.
That is exactly what happened to Adnan Syed. I don't know if you ever listened to the Serial podcast. My friend Rabia, it's one of her friends. Long story short, the detective, and I'm not going to name him because he doesn't deserve to be named, he said, oh, it's probably the boyfriend. And they made this timeline how it had to go. And then they got somebody on a lower level drug charge to just say, yeah, everything they said. And they were tapping on this timeline to get him to follow it. Listen to the Undisclosed podcast. The first season is amazing. And it lays out all the bad stuff that the cops did just to get this guy put away because they wanted to close this case. Yeah. And he just recently got out of prison because, there finally was a prosecutor who said, wait a minute, we don't have to just win for winning's sake. We want to get the person who did this, because you're not getting justice for the victim. The victims that Albert DeSalvo didn't get justice.
Nope, you're right.
Haymon Lee did not get justice. Find the right person. If you can't find the right person, wait a few years and get fresh eyes on it. Like they're doing so much of that these days with cold cases, and it's really changing the landscape of detective work in law enforcement. And people are people are getting fed up with these cops who just want to solve the case. They don't want to solve the case. They want to close the case.
Yeah,
there's a big difference between the two.
And that's exactly what happened with Albert DeSalvo. That's exactly what the Boston Police Department did. Is there's terror in the streets. People aren't buying things. Women aren't leaving the house at night. Our economy is suffering. Solve this case now. Pin it on somebody and get this off our desk. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly why we end up where we end up. Because again, we know Albert DeSalvo killed one of them for sure, and probably more. He probably killed each of the elderly women.
That's why I think that he killed all the elderly women, not the younger ones.
But he may not have been alone, and there are at least 4 other proper suspects who could have been involved. Certainly in the murders that we know he didn't commit, which was the younger women, but also even in the cases of the elderly women, he may have been working with somebody.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now let's talk about Ninja Turtles. Transitioning from Boston Strangler to Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 is turning 30 this weekend. It's the subject of the 93 podcast with myself, Amy, and MJ, which we actually just recorded that today. I know it's a lot of fun. I don't hate this. I mean, it's a dumb movie for babies. And if you look at it as a dumb movie for babies, I think it's pretty good as a dumb movie for babies. Amy and MJ hate it. You'll hear that throughout the 93 show when it goes up. Is how much they hated this. I didn't hate this. I kind of enjoyed it.
I never watched it because I was just old enough that I was still Star Wars, not Ninja Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't give a shit about Ninja Turtles, honestly.
Yeah, I was a little bit too old for Ninja Turtles. Because like I said, I think it's a baby product. And I think if you're trying to look at this as a movie, it's bad. Like it's, on a lot of different levels, it's a bad movie. But if you look at it as a movie for little kids, I think little kids are going to have a lot of fun watching this. And to me, that was enough.
Yeah.
Bob, what do you think of Ninja Turtles?
But it was for older kids and teenagers. So that's why 3 is so bad, because by then we've all grown up even more. It wasn't for little kids. I don't know. I hated part 3. I didn't mind 2 if I thought the stupidness was fun and it was right in that. Mm-hmm. Vanilla Ice was popular, and I was dumb enough and young enough to think that was cool. But this one was just, it was, at that point, I think I'm in junior high, and I grew up more with the Turtles than did Star Wars. So I was a fan of the Ninja Turtles, and it looked like they ran out of ideas. They didn't know what to do, and they just... it was boring. It wasn't fun. It was just dumb. Now, I didn't go back and watch it, so maybe I would have a different appreciation. But it also seems like a lot of work.
The best part of the show, talking about it, was explaining to MJ about Vanilla Ice's involvement and trying to explain first who Vanilla Ice was, but also that they get to introduce them to the phrase "Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go." The look of absolute mortification on this young person's face was quite something.
I used to know every word of that song.
Aren't all the words "Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go"?
I mean, that may be the case. I think it starts "Yo, it's the Green Machine, gonna rock the town." I'm trying to remember it without being seen. I I'm kind of gone after that. Have you ever seen a turtle get down? I don't know what's that. I'm done. That's pretty far. I'm pretty surprised that
that's
far.
it. That's impressive.
No,
that's
it's
impressive.
Not. It's pathetic, is what it is. But
what part of your life? What part of your life have you forgotten so you could retain that piece of information?
I don't forget anything, and it's weird, especially when it's bullshit. If it's important, I might forget it, or if my wife tells me, I'll forget it. But the dumbest shit.
Your anniversary, the kids' birthdays.
Yeah, I don't know my nieces and nephews' birthdays,
but the lyrics to "Go Ninja Go," you got that.
I mean, everybody knew Ice Ice Baby. You know that, but Go Ninja Go was not nearly that popular.
The other 1993 movie this week is Point of No Return with Bridget Fonda, a remake, of course, of a French film, I believe it was. Yes, and Bridget Fonda stars as a woman who's trained to become an assassin. Gabriel Byrne is her handler. Dermot Mulroney is the man she falls in love with. There's Harvey Keitel as well. Directed by John Badham. Incredibly skillful, stylish, fun. Not deep necessarily, but it's a really solid action movie with a female lead, which was really novel at the time, and she's a real badass in the movie, which I loved that. I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fond memories of this movie. I didn't get a chance to go back and watch it this week. I wish I would have instead of Ninja Turtles, maybe. Although I didn't hate that, I would have enjoyed Point of No Return more, I'm sure. But yeah, I loved Point of No Return for years.
I saw it twice in the theater when it came out. The first time, I had no idea, that it was a remake of La Femme Nikita. I went and saw it with a friend from the dorm, and we sat down. I was like, this seems awful familiar. And then I got back, and my Premiere magazine had come while we were at the movies, and I read it. I was like, oh, no wonder. Of course it is. This movie, like I said the other day, introduced me to Nina Simone. So it's very important to me. Bridget Fonda was amazing in it. She's just, I really bought her as an assassin. I did not get a chance to go back and watch it, but that's what I'm watching tonight after the show. Cool. I'm going to, it was one of those movies that I played the soundtrack that summer, probably more than anything else. So highly recommended. Until I watch it again tonight, I'm like, oh my God, what was I watching?
No, I'm with you guys. Especially I was coming into the age where I liked something like this more than I would Ninja Turtles. So maybe that was why I hated Ninja Turtles. But this was, I mean, this is one of the first action movies that I really remember and kind of being my own and not my dad's or whatever that he was showing me. So it really is a. I mean, I watched it a lot on video on HBO or whatever, whenever there was a free preview. I remember watching that a lot. Bridget Fonda was awesome. And I feel like this was her peak in terms of popularity. She'd done other things, but, this was, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought she was going to be a much bigger star, and she should have gone on to keep doing things like this. I mean, maybe they don't let women do that much, but
there's probably one of those articles out there, one of those clickbait things, why they don't cast Bridget Fonda anymore. But it's probably just misogyny.
Well, no, this was her choice. She did Jackie Brown, and then she just didn't love acting anymore, and she wanted to raise a family and do other stuff. She she didn't really want to be an actress anymore, and she's not. She's, I saw an article not too long ago I guess we're going back to the appearance of actresses where she gained a lot of weight and you couldn't recognize her, and good for her. She just didn't want to do it anymore, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. No, she left behind a bunch of stuff that will be remembered forever. So, yeah,
and it's probably better for her legacy that way. Probably anybody's who does that. No, I agree. I mean, but this was a star-making role and just a ton of fun. You'll have to let me know if it's any good, though.
All right. Well, that's all the movies this week. If you want to get on to some flick chart, guys.
Yeah. Do you know off the top of your head what's next week? I know I wrote it down.
John Wick.
John Wick. That's right.
John Wick 4 is what we're talking about. So we're talking about all the John Wick movies next week. There is also one other new movie. We don't need to talk about it, but The Lost King with Sally Hawkins is a movie I'm looking forward to seeing because it does have a very intriguing story. Based on a true story about a woman who may or may not have found the remains of a king, of an English king from that many people thought could never be found. It's kind of an interesting story.
Yeah. 93, nothing really of note. What are you guys watching? Do you know?
We're watching. So this is fun. We had a movie earlier this year called Hexed with Ari Gross. And Ari Gross is back already. He got another movie. The Opposite Sex and How to Live with Them somehow has worse reviews than Hexed. And so it made it just irresistible to watch. Like, how bad does a movie have to be worse than Hexed is the question we're going to answer.
They literally have to kill children and puppies and kittens. Because Hexed is one of the worst movies that's ever existed.
Well, when you have 9 words in your title, that doesn't help you.
This has got Courtney Cox, Jeff. If you want to watch it, it's got Courtney Cox.
I'm good.
Yeah. This is more like Masters of the Universe Courtney Cox and less Friends Courtney Cox.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I might watch Born Yesterday. That's the Melanie Griffith one, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Melanie Griffith, Don Johnson, and John Goodman, a remake of a 1960s movie, early 1960s movie.
We also got Hear No Evil and Married to It.
1950s. That because Judy Holliday, is it Judy Holliday?
Might be.
She beat out Betty Davis and Gloria Swanson for Best Actress for Born Yesterday. So it's like 1950.
All right, flick chart time. Child's Play, School of Rock.
School of Rock.
Child's Play.
School of Rock.
Don't like Jack Black. Except I still know what you did last summer.
Doc Hollywood, Stealing Christmas.
I don't remember Stealing Christmas. What is that?
Oh, Tony Danza.
Tony Danza, Leah Thompson.
No, I have no idea
Betty
what that
White.
is.
Never seen it.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
I don't even remember Doc Hollywood. I know I've seen it, but
Doc Hollywood, Flight of the Navigator.
Doc Hollywood is an important movie for me because it's where I confirm my heterosexuality. As far as I know, no. There's a scene in the movie, like my first great boobs scene, where in a movie that just did not expect to see boobs. There's a scene where the main character's girlfriend, before the first time they meet, she's walking out of a lake topless for some reason, and it's like, wow, boobs.
And Michael J. Fox
I'm
is
excited.
bottomless in it, so
Doc, weird anecdote, but yeah, I'm choosing Doc Hollywood.
Sadly, that's the only thing I remember about the movie as well. But I will choose that over Flight of the Navigator.
yeah, same.
The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, You, Me, and Dupree.
The Mummy.
Yeah, The Mummy.
I don't care. American Pie 2, Sausage Party.
That's tough.
American Pie 2.
That's tough for me because I think Sausage Party is really, really funny.
My nieces watch that. I'm convinced that's why they are the way they are.
Bob, where are you going?
I'm going American Pie 2. I actually didn't like Sausage Party. I don't know if I just had too big of a bar for it or what, but I didn't think it was
enough
that
dicks
funny.
in it for you?
Maybe. I just didn't do anything for me. 6 Days, 7 Nights, Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Oh, I really like 6 Days, 7 Nights. I feel like because of Anne Heche coming out, I think it really got a kind of a bad rap. But I saw Exit Through the Gift Shop right after I saw the Mr. Brainwash show, and I live in New York, so I'm going to go with that.
I've never seen that. The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, The Wolfman.
Hunger Games.
Yep.
The Terminator, Pretty Woman.
The Terminator. I wish the Terminator would kill Pretty Woman.
Oh, God. The one thing I remember about Sean and his reviews is how much he has always fucking hated Pretty Woman. But yeah, I'm going to go with Terminator 2.
But
I don't hate Pretty Woman.
I can relate, though. I think as much of him hating the movie has to do with the movie as it does the audience for it. The audience can be pretty
Which
unbearable.
happens. It also happens to be my mom's favorite movie.
My bad.
Oh, Sue.
R.I.P. Mom. But she knew I hated it. She knew I hated it. It's okay.
I can hear her saying, but why? It's a good movie.
No, it's not.
It's not.
The Legend of Bagger Vance, Little Giants.
The Legend of Bagger Vance.
You pick, Bob. I've never seen either one of them.
Neither have I, so Sean wins.
It's more I hate the other movie than I like Legend of Bagger Vance.
Logan's Run, Chariots of Fire.
Logan's Run.
Logan's Run by a lot.
Yeah, Chariots of Fire. Good God, what a boring movie.
How that won an Oscar? Oh, that just shows you how old the Academy has always been.
And they're still voting. Those same people are still voting.
They were only 63 then when it came out.
I don't know, is your internet ending the show?
I hope not. Is there anything you want to run through?
I mean, I guess we could do Boston Strangler. It's not going to do very well.
Yeah.
All right, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I just want to see if Sean actually say that.
Or whatever. I don't care about
I don't
Lord
really
of the
care
Rings.
either, but
That would actually be a tough one.
Garden State or Swingers?
Garden State.
Garden State.
I'll go Swingers.
It's tough though. Yeah, it's tough.
Open Water, Moonlight.
Swingers to me is only like it's diminishing returns every time I watch it.
That's reasonable.
Well, and the fact that Vince Vaughn just keeps... I guess he's not as bad as some other people, but when I saw Swingers for the first time, I didn't know who he was. So he was actually kind of refreshing and fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here.
Open Water or Moonlight?
Moonlight. I love Open Water, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, finally we can move on to the Boston Strangler.
All right.
I was just waiting for a non-good matchup.
All right.
The Boston Strangler, 3 from Hell.
The Boston Strangler.
Yeah, I fucking hate Rob Zombie. Sorry, horror nerds.
I enjoy Rob Zombie. Devil's Rejects, one of my favorite movies ever. That said,
yeah, well, there's no accounting for taste.
God, my internet.
I don't hate Rob Zombie. I hate his movies.
I only like Devil's Rejects. I think I get lumped into a huge Rob Zombie fan because of that. But I thought 33 from Hell was kind of bad. Boston Strangler, 21.
Boston Strangler.
Yep, same.
2 in a row.
Although Nicolas Cage was great in that
What
movie.
the hell happened?
Well,
That was wow. I just kind of gave up.
I already did that one. I feel like my internet might have picked
weird.
like 9 of them for us. Because I did see it kind of glitch on me.
Yeah, that was funny. It's just sort of like, yeah, you're done. Like 672 is actually a really good spot for this movie.
Right behind the Brady Bunch.
sure, Jan.
All right, we did this over 21, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe they
Yeah,
only
that's
let us. Maybe they think it's just this one. I don't know.
I don't know. That's weird. That's fine. I guess we're done.
All right. Well, thanks for having me back, guys.
Thanks for coming back, Bob.
All right. I'll talk to you guys next week.
Cool. John
See ya.
Wick week.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.